Okay, let's start this third video. I think a little bit of a summary is necessary before we proceed, though. So very quickly, Mary Maloney is a wife. We've seen her at the beginning as submissive woman, probably. Well, submissive. We need to think that she likes what she's doing. She's very fond of her husband. She's fond of her life. She likes being at home, spending time. After all, she's pregnant. She is going through day after day this life that she probably likes. We tend to think that this is a kind of a stereotype, uh, but we don't really know what she thinks. She seems to be happy about it until the moment her husband comes back, and she comes back with a terrible piece of news, which devastates the poor woman. She doesn't know what to do, and she behaves a bit like a robot. She goes downstairs, she searches for something in the freezer, and she finds the leg of a lamb, and she carries on, cooking, even though her husband made it really clear that he was going to split up with her and separate and go his own way. Uh, Unexpectedly, when she comes back and she sees him standing there, and he screams at her, she just hits him, and she hits him, very violently, and she does so in spite of her own will. She's probably discovering a part of herself that she had never known it existed. Um, you know, she experiences a high degree of alienation, and her reaction is on the one hand physical, in the fact that we said that she felt as if she were numb. She couldn't feel the floor. She was behaving it's in a sort of automatic way. Um, but at the same time, there is something which provokes in her a terrible anger. Um, and she happens to kill her husband. So we begin to see here a change. We begin to see a change in the perspective of the psychological side of the character. Um, she she starts thinking very fast, if you remember about that. After she killed him, she she doesn't know what she's done, but suddenly the first thing that happens to her is that her brain begins to think and to be very clear about the consequences of what she has just done. So we see a new woman. We see a woman who's capable of dissimulating, for example. She's rehearsing in front of the mirror. We see a woman who's very clear in her purpose, and a woman who is not ready to take a chance about going to prison and having her baby killed together with her. So, we don't see the same woman we were seeing at the beginning. A person who was devout, passive, even, who was interpreting the role of the stereotyped wife, who waits, on her husband for everything. Um, Psychology, however, is a more complex thing than that, and her love and affection for her husband mix together with this rational side. So she sits by him. She ran over to him, knelt down beside him, and began to cry her heart out. So she's deeply affected, And even though she's clear-minded, and the first reaction was a reaction that made her lose her mind, there are three aspects which intertwine and act together. So we have this, triple. It's not a triple personality, but a threefold reaction that we can witness in this moment. So, there is a sort of a wounded side of Mary Maloney that is touched when she sees her husband on the floor and she begins to cry. Okay, let's go on. It was easy. No acting was necessary. A few minutes later, she got up and went to the phone. She knew the number of the police station, and when the man at the other end answered, she cried to him, "Quick! Come quick! Patrick's dead! Who's speaking?" "Mrs. Maloney, Mrs. Patrick Maloney." "You mean Patrick Maloney's dead?" "I think so," she sobbed. "He's lying on the floor and I think he's dead." "Be right over," the man said. The car came very quickly, and when she opened the front door, two policemen walked in. She knew them both. She knew nearly all the men at that precinct, and she fell right into a chair, then went over to join the other one, who was called O'Malley, kneeling by the body. "Is he dead?" she cried. "I'm afraid he is. What happened?" Briefly, she told her story about going out to the grocer and coming back to find him on the floor. While she was talking, crying and talking, no one discovered a small patch of congealed blood on the dead man's head. He showed it to O'Malley, who got up at once and hurried to the phone. Soon other men began to come into the house. First a doctor, then two detectives, one of whom she knew by name. Later, a police photographer arrived and took pictures, and a man who knew about fingerprints. There was a great deal of whispering and muttering beside the corpse, and the detectives kept asking her a lot of questions. But they always treated her kindly. She told her story again, this time right from the beginning, when Patrick had come in and she was sewing, and he was tired, so tired he hadn't wanted to go out for supper. She told how she'd put the meat in the oven. It's there now, cooking. And how she'd slipped out to the grocer for vegetables and come back to find him lying on the floor. "Which grocer?" one of the detectives asked. She told him, and he turned and whispered something to the other detective, who immediately went outside into the street. In 15 minutes, he was back with a page of notes, and there was more whispering, and through her sobbing, she heard a few of the whispered phrases. Acted quite normal, very cheerful, wanted to give him a good supper, peas, cheesecake. Impossible that she... After a while, the photographer and the doctor departed, and two other men came in and took the corpse away on a stretcher. Then the fingerprint man went away. The two detectives remained, and so did two policemen. They were exceptionally nice to her, and Jack Nolan asked if she wouldn't rather go somewhere else, to her sister's house perhaps, or to his own wife, who would take care of her and put her up for the night. No, she said, she didn't feel she could move even a yard at the moment. Would they mind awfully if she stayed just where she was until she felt better? She didn't feel too good at the moment, she really didn't. Then hadn't she better lie down on the bed? Jack Nolan asked. No, she said, she'd like to stay right where she was, in this chair. A little later, perhaps, when she felt better, she would move. So they left her there while they went about their business, searching the house. Occasionally, one of the detectives asked her another question. Sometimes Jack Nolan spoke at her gently as he passed by. Her husband, he told her, had been killed by a blow on the back of the head, administered with a heavy, blunt instrument, almost certainly a large piece of metal. They were looking for the weapon. The murderer may have taken it with him, but on the other hand, he may have thrown it away or hidden it somewhere on the premises. It's the old story, he said. Get the weapon, and you've got the man. Later, one of the detectives came up and sat beside her. Did she know, he asked, of anything in the house that could have been used as a weapon? Would she mind having a look around to see if anything was missing? A very big spanner, for example, or a heavy metal vase? They didn't have any metal vases, she said, or a big spanner. She didn't think they had a big spanner, but there might be some things like that in the garage. The search went on. She knew that there were other policemen in the garden all around the house. She could hear their footsteps on the gravel outside, and sometimes she saw a flash of a torch through a chink in the curtains. It began to get late, nearly 9. She noticed by the clock on the mantel. The 4 men searching the room seemed to be growing weary, a trifle exasperated. Jack, she said, the next time Sergeant Nolan went... Jack, she said, the next time Sergeant Nolan went by, would you mind giving me a drink? Sure, I'll give you a drink. You mean this whiskey? Yes, please, but just a small one. It might make me feel a bit better. He handed her the glass. Why don't you have one yourself, she said. You must be awfully tired. Please do. You've been very good to me. Well, he answered, it's not strictly allowed, but I might take just a drop to keep me going. One by one, the others came in and were persuaded to take a little nip of whiskey. They stood around rather awkwardly with their drinks in their hands, uncomfortable in her presence, trying to say consoling things to her. Sergeant Nolan wandered into the kitchen, came out quickly and said, Look, Mrs. Maloney, you know that oven of yours is still on, and the meat is still inside? Oh, dear me, she cried. So it is. I'd better turn it off for you, hadn't I? Will you do that, Jack? Thank you so much. When the sergeant returned the second time, she looked at him with her large, dark, tearful eyes. Jack Nolan, she said. Yes? Would you do me a small favour, you and these others? We can try, Mrs. Maloney. Well, she said, here you all are, and good friends of dear Patrick's too, and helping to catch the man who killed him. You must be terribly hungry by now, because it's long past your supper time, and I know Patrick would never forgive me. God bless his soul if I allowed you to remain in this house without offering you decent hospitality. Why don't you eat up that lamb that's in the oven? It'll be cooked just right by now. Wouldn't dream of it, Sergeant Nolan said. Please, she begged, please eat it. Personally, I couldn't touch a thing, certainly not what's been in the house when he was here. But if it's all right for you, it'd be a favour to me if you'd eat it up. Then you can go on with your work again afterwards. There was a good deal of hesitating among the 4 policemen, but they were clearly hungry, and in the end they were persuaded to go into the kitchen and help themselves. The woman stayed where she was, listened to them speaking among themselves, their voices thick and sloppy because their mouths were full of meat. Have some more, Charlie. No, better not finish it. She wants us to finish it. She said so. Be doing her a favour. Okay then, give me some more. That's the hell of a big club the guy must have used to hit poor Patrick, one of them was saying. The doc says his skull was smashed all to pieces just like from a sledgehammer. That's why it ought to be easy to find. Exactly what I say. Whoever done it, they're not going to be carrying a thing like that around with them longer than they need, one of them belched. Personally, I think it's right here on the premises. Probably right under our very noses. What do you think, Jack? And in the other room, Mary Maloney began to giggle. Okay, so the ending in Roald Dahl's short story is always very surprising. This one is definitely, definitely a surprise. So we basically recognize that this is a perfect crime. The perfect crime because the weapon which has been used to kill Patrick Maloney is actually eaten up by the police. And this is very ironical. It is ironical because the police and policemen, men in general, are supposed to be the ones in power, are supposed to be the ones who lead, the game. And a poor woman, subdued, a woman who, as initially we compared it to the lamb, is in fact making sort of fun of everybody else. She's the one at the end who turns into the assassin. She's like a candid assassin. She's still perceived by men as very naive, as docile, as a sweet woman. But she is in fact the murderer. Okay, um, this is one aspect of it. We need to think as well that the transformation involves Patrick Maloney. Patrick Maloney at the beginning is seen as a strong man, the man in control, the stereotype of man, the stereotype of the, what in Italian we call padre padrone, or husband padrone, whatever. But, he's actually the victim. He's actually the victim. It's probably the one being sacrificed. In fact, he's at the end, he's the lamb, and the sacrifice is probably a sacrifice to save the baby. Mary Maloney was thinking about what would have happened to her baby if she had surrendered. We said she wasn't ready to take the chance, and we throughout the story we have discovered, and probably Mary Maloney has discovered the strong side of her, and also the diabolic side of her, psychology. Okay, so I like the idea of a total reversal, and the surprise that this short story is capable of, you know, um, yeah, giving us, basically. Okay, that's all. I hope you have enjoyed it, and see you soon.